Let's see what we got. Okay, good. Min shuffled, cursing softly at her skirts. Still trying to decide if you should run? Matt asked Min under his breath as Tuan approached. Yes, Min said sourly. The beds are nice here, you know, and they know how to treat a fellow, so long as you don't end up beheading him. I still haven't figured out what keeps that from happening. Wonderful. Matt turned to her. You realize that if Rand were here, he'd probably ask you to stay. Min glared at him. It's just the truth, Min. The bloody truth. I was there when Rand brought them to his side, and I can tell you he was worried. The Shonchan and Aes Sedai don't get along too well, if you hadn't noticed. That's about as obvious as your pride is, Matt. Ouch. Here I'm trying to help. I tell you, Min, how much relief do you think it would bring Rand if he knew that someone he trusted had Tuan's ear? Someone who could nudge her to play nicely with the Aes Sedai by giving the right omens at the right time. Of course, you could be back at the camp hauling water and running messages. I'm sure that would be just as helpful as you keeping an eye on a foreign monarch and encouraging her to trust and respect the Dragon Reborn, building a bridge of friendship between her and the rest of the nations. Min stood silently for a moment. I hate you, bloody Randall. That's the spirit, Matt said, raising a hand to greet Tuan. Now let's see which of my limbs she cuts off for throwing away her fancy clothing. Too bad about that. Nice embroidery on that robe. The man needed a little embroidery to keep him refined. Still, he was not about to wear that heap of cloth into battle. He would have better luck trying to fight while carrying pips on his back. The others did their usual bowing and scraping while Tuan walked up, though she had been gone only a few minutes. Matt gave her a nod. She took in his clothing with a long glance up and down. Why was everyone so sour on a good shirt and jacket? He had not chosen the ratty one he had worn to visit Elaine. He had burned that. Greatest one, Cortana said. She was of the high blood and could address Tuan directly. May you always draw breath. The Raven Prince has determined that he himself must visit the battlefield, as he has judged our messengers and generals to be lacking skill. Matt hooked his thumbs into his belt, regarding Tuan, as a groom finally arrived with pips. About bloody time. Had the boy stopped for lunch along the way? Perhaps taken in a Gleeman performance or two? Well, why are you waiting? Tuan asked. If the Prince of the Ravens wishes to see the battlefield, I would think that loyal servants of the Empire would have tripped over themselves in their haste to carry him there. Cortana looked as if she had been slapped. Matt grinned at Tuan, and she favored him with a smile. Light, but he liked those smiles. So, you're coming along, then? He asked Tuan. Of course. You see a reason why I should not? Not a one, Matt said, groaning inside. Not a single bloody one.
Are we there? Shall we try this? Okay. Elaine hadn't slept the night before. She'd spent the time searching for inspiring words, seeking something she could say this day that would have meaning. What did you say when all was coming to an end? She halted Moon Shadow at the front of the line of Andoran soldiers, Her words would be relayed using weaves to the entire army. Elaine was surprised to see that some of the Aiel were drawing close to listen. She wouldn't have thought they'd care about the words of a wetlander queen. She opened her mouth to speak, and the sun went out. Elaine froze, looking upward with shock. The clouds had parted above them. They often did when she was near. One way the bond with Rand manifested, and so she'd been expecting an open sky and light for this battle. The sun still shone up there, but occluded. Something solid and dark rolled in front of it. All across her army, men looked up, raising fingers as they were swallowed by darkness. Light! It was hard to keep from trembling. She heard cries through the army, lamentations, worries, cries of despair. Elaine gathered her confidence and kicked her horse forward. "This is the place," she announced, enhancing her voice with the one power to project across the field, "where I promise you we will win. This is where I tell you that days will continue. The land will recover. This is the time when I promise you that the light will return, that hope will survive, that we will continue to live." She paused. Behind the army, people lined the top of Cyrion's city walls. Children, women, and the elderly, who were armed with kitchen knives and pots to throw down should the Trollocs destroy the army and come for the city. There had barely been time to contact them. A skeleton force of soldiers guarded the city. Now their distant figures huddled down as darkness ate the sky. Those walls offered a false safety. They meant little when the enemy had dreadlords. She needed to defeat the Trolloc army quickly, not hide and allow them to be reinforced by the larger force to the south. "I am supposed to reassure you," Elaine shouted to the men, "but I cannot. I will not tell you that the land will survive, that the light will prevail. Doing so would remove responsibility. This is our duty, our blood that will be spilled this day. We have come here to fight. If we do not, then the land will die. The light will fall to the shadow. This is not a day for empty promises. Our blood is the fire within us. Today, our blood must drive us to defeat the shadow." She turned her horse. The men had looked away from the darkness above toward her. She wove a light high in the sky above her, drawing their attention. "Our blood is our passion," she shouted. "Too much of what I hear from my armies is about resistance. We cannot merely resist. We must show them our anger, our fury at what they have done. We must not resist. Today, we must destroy. Our blood is our land. This place is ours, and we claim it. For our fathers and mothers, for our children. Our blood is our life. We have come to give it. Across the world, other armies are pushed back. We will not retreat. Our task is to spend our blood, to die advancing. We will not remain still. No. If we are to have the light again, we must make it ours. We must reclaim it and cast out the shadow. He seeks to make you despair, to win this battle before it begins. We will not give him that satisfaction. We will destroy this army before us, then destroy the one behind. And from there we bring our blood, our life, our fire, our passion to the others who fight. From there it spreads to victory and the light." She honestly didn't know what kind of response to expect from a battlefield speech. She'd read all the great ones, particularly those given by queens of Andor. When younger, she'd imagined the soldiers clapping and shouting. the response given to a gleeman at a rowdy tavern. Instead, the men raised weapons to her. Drawn swords, pikes lifted, then thumped back against the ground. The Aiel did give some whoops, but the Andorrans looked at her with solemn eyes. She had not inspired them to excitement, but to determination. That seems the more honest emotion. They ignored the darkness in the sky and turned eyes on the goal. Birgitta walked up beside her horse. That was quite good, Elaine. When did you change it? Elaine blushed, thinking of the carefully prepared speech she'd memorized last night while repeating it half a dozen times to Birgitta. It had been a work of beauty, with allusions to the sayings of queens through the ages. She'd forgotten every word of it, once that darkness had come. This one had spurted out instead.
That man looks familiar, Loyal thought. Yes, it was the horse. He'd seen that horse before many times. Lan, he thought, numb. Lan is the one riding out alone. Loyal stood. Aerith looked up at him as he shouldered his axe.
Wait,
Loyal said to her.
fight alongside the others. I must go.
Go?
I need to witness this.
Loyal said. The fall of the last king of the Malkieri. He would need to include it in his book. Prepare to charge! Sorry. Arganda yelled. Men, form up! Archers to the front, cavalry next. Foot soldiers, prepare to come up behind. A charge, Tem thought. Yes, that is our only hope. They had to continue their push, but their line was so thin. He could see what Matt had been trying, but it wasn't going to work. They needed to fight it through anyway. Well, he is dead, a mercenary said from near Tam, nodding toward Lan Mandragoran as he rode toward the Trolloc flank. Bloody borderlanders. Tam, Abel said from beside him. Above them, the sky grew darker. Was that possible at night? Those terrible boiling clouds seemed to come lower and lower. Tam almost lost Lan's figure atop the midnight stallion despite the bonfires burning on the heights. Their light seemed feeble. He's running for Demandred, Tam thought, but there's a wall of Trollocs in his way. Tam took out an arrow from a resin-soaked rag tied behind the head and knocked it into his bow. 2 Rivers men, prepare to fire! The mercenary nearby laughed. That's 100 paces at least. You'll fill him with arrows, if anything. Tam eyed the man, then took his arrow and thrust the end into a torch. The bundled rag behind the head came alight with fire. First rank, on my signal, Tam yelled, ignoring the other orders that came down the line. Let's give Lord Mandragoran a little something to guide his way. Tam drew in a fluid motion, the burning rag warming his fingers, and loosed. Lan charged toward the Trollocs. His lance and its 3 replacements had all shattered long ago. At his neck, he wore the cold medallion that Berlain had sent through the gateway with a simple note. I do not know how Galad ended up with this, but I believe he wished me to send it to Cawthon. Lan did not consider what he was doing. The Void did not allow such things. Some men would call it brash, foolhardy, suicidal. The world was rarely changed by men who were unwilling to try being at least one of the 3. He sent what comfort he could to distant Nynaeve through the bond, then prepared to fight. As Lan neared the Trollocs, the beasts set up a spear line in front of him. A horse would impale itself trying to push through that. Lan drew in breath, calm within the void, planning to slice the head off the first spear, then ram his way through the line. It was an impossible maneuver. All the Trollocs would need to do was squeeze together and slow him. After that, they would overwhelm Mandarb and pull Lan from the saddle. But someone had to destroy Demandred. With the medallion at his neck, Lan raised his sword. A flaming arrow streaked down from the sky and hit the throat of the Trolloc right in front of Lan. Without hesitation, Lan used the fallen Trolloc as the opening in the line of spears. He crashed the Shadow Spawn, trampling the fallen one. He would need to... Another arrow fell, dropping a Trolloc. Then another and another in quick succession. Mandarb crashed through the confused, burning and dying Trollocs as an entire rain of burning arrows dropped in front of him. "Malkir!" Lan yelled, heeling Mandarb forward, trampling corpses, but maintaining speed as the way opened. A hail of light dropped before him, each arrow precise, killing a Trolloc that tried to stand before him. He thundered through the ranks, shoving aside dying Trollocs, flaming arrows guiding his way in the darkness like a roadway. The Trollocs stood thick on either side, but those in front of him dropped and dropped until there were no more. Thank you, Tam.